an introduction. I'm going to hand over to Richard at this point, if that's all right.
Yeah, thank you. So very good morning, everybody. I'm Richard Henson, Chief Exec of EMAS. I just want to formally acknowledge and announce that Karen has officially been appointed as the new chairman of East Midlands Ambulance Service, so is here formally in her capacity as our new chair with effect from the 1st of August. So just on behalf of all board members, Karen, if I can just congratulate you on your new appointment, and we'll look forward to working with you in your new capacity. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, apologies, Karen.
We have no apologies. Sorry.
Okay, no apologies. Okay. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations?
Chair, I have a declaration of interest in relation to item 108 in the governance report.
Okay, so we'll raise that when we get to that point then.
Yes, at the point we just need the details.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting that were held on the 7th of June. We'll do a page turn. So page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, no amendments. Thank you very much for the good record. So the matters arising then, we'll just have a look at those. So this is item 98 on your agenda. Actions from the minutes of the Trust Board meeting. So the first one is due in September, so we can park that up. Nicola, do you want to update us on the patient story and permission from the family, please?
Yes, I can do. We have recontacted the family. We haven't had a response from them, so I'm taking it that they would rather that they didn't have this used in any other way than we have done already. So I'm proposing that we close both action 19 and 20 unless they do get back in touch with us. We can reopen this, but I don't really feel it's appropriate to keep pursuing them.
No, I would agree completely. Okay. So will you let them know that we're, because you've asked them for the information, are you going to close it down with the family, Nicola?
We will do, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And please thank them and acknowledge that it's not an issue, that, that's what the family wish to do. We respect that completely. Okay, so that's 19 and 20 action items have been closed. And the following one in relation to the mental health strategy, that's not due until November. Now, November is not a full board meeting. Is that a problem for the action, Nicola?
No, I think the action was for us to do a development session on mental health. So that's where that will be picked up.
Okay, all right then, thank you. Okay, then we've got 2 pages of closed actions on pages 3 and 4. Are there any items there that anybody wants to make reference to, or are you happy with the actions? Okay, everybody's acknowledging that they're happy with the actions. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 100, which is the Chief Executive's report. So I'm going to hand over to Richard now to introduce this. Oh, apologies, I've missed the questions from the public relating to the agenda. Have we received any, Karen?
We received one written question, but it didn't relate to any item on the agenda. So we've explained to the member of the public that it will be dealt with as a freedom of information request.
Okay, so we don't need to do anything with it today?
No.
Okay, my apologies for jumping that, Richard. So we can move over to your report now.
We can. So yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I will take the Chief Exec report as read, and in a couple of moments I will hand over to Ben Holdaway, who will give an update on operational delivery and performance through the month of July, and also Nicola Bramhall, who will give an update on patient safety and serious incidents through the month of July. If I may, just a couple of items I would like just to particularly focus on. One is quite rightly, I think it's really important that into the meeting that we will be talking around the impact that we continue to face as a result of handover delays at hospitals, which are impacting on our ability to respond to patients in a timely manner. And that is twofold. Clearly, many patients are waiting unacceptably long for an ambulance response. At times, where patients warrant a more timely response, we're unable to always meet that, primarily as a result of factors which are out of our control, where capacity in the wider urgent and emergency care system is impacting our ability to respond in a timely manner. But then also, and it's really important that I recognise the fact of the impact that has on our own staff from a health and wellbeing perspective, where our colleagues are waiting for many hours with patients in the backs of ambulances, where they're performing roles which they're not necessarily skilled or trained to doing so, i.e. prolonged nursing and caring type roles in ambulances. But more importantly, they're not able to respond to patients in a timely manner in the community. So that's something which I do believe we should have some further conversation on this morning, and we will do as the agenda moves forward. But I just think it's important that is raised today. We organisationally continue to work with all of our system partners. I think it's fair to say with all of the ICBs and system colleagues, we are very, very clear on the impact that this is having on our patients in the community. And I always explicitly make clear that the patients waiting in the community are not just the responsibility of the ambulance service, they are responsible, the responsibility of the whole of the health system. Whilst prolonged waits manifest often in the ambulance domain, they're often a symptom of a much more deep-rooted complex situation resulting as a result of flow and discharge in the acute as one reason. But that is something which we will continue, Chair, to absolutely focus on, and I will give board members updates in due course as to what else is happening about this. It is fair to say this is recognised as not only a local or regional, but indeed a national problem, that many ambulance services are facing this on a daily basis. So it's something which is a very complex, deep-rooted issue, and we have to really ensure we maintain our focus on seeing some significant improvements. So at that, I'm going to hand over to Ben Holdaway, if I may, Ben, to give an operational update for July.
Yeah, that's fine, Richard. Thank you. Morning, everyone. So what I'll usually do, I'll take any questions that people have on the paper, but I'll just give an update on the month of July, where we finished in against the pillars, as I usually do. So from an activity point of view, I'll start with calls. So our call pickup this year was a 9-second mean and a 25-second 90th. So comparing that against last year, where we had a mean of 33 seconds, it's a much improved call pickup position. The calls compared to last July, was slightly down against the indicative activity plan, 2% down, which is about 85 calls a day. However, the activity plan within the contract does have 26% growth from the last contract, so 2019-20. So a good performance with the call pickup, and we remain strong, and the plan moving forward for call pickup and our EMD numbers are very strong. We have a very good recruitment plan running into the winter, so don't foresee any problems there. From a incident point of view, we were down on the indicative activity plan, which by around about 8%, which is about 200 incidents a day compared to the plan. And the response is a similar position, down on the activity plan, and we were averaging around 1,700 responses a day, which is around 200 down from where we have been previously. But as we've said in previous boards, I think the important note there is a lot of the activity we're taking out from a response perspective, actually they should get an ambulance. It's a fact that we can't get to them through our demand management plans that is causing us not to respond to those patients. And that actually, some of them actually do need a response, and don't know for 100% sure, but the strong likelihood is they still end up at A&E, but presenting themselves because we physically can't get there for the issues that Richard outlined in his opening. And because of that, our CSP levels remain continually high, and for the vast majority of July, we were either in 4A or level 4 for prolonged periods of time with our activity. And from a resource perspective, again, it remains, as Richard alluded to, the issues we're seeing through handovers is playing out through our resources. So we put out in this July compared to last July around 10,500 fewer DCA hours. Part of that was down to 2,000 hours of private resource, and that was a known reduction because of the reduction in the COVID monies. So we had to reduce the output of our private provision by about 2,000 hours, but that still left us around 8,500 fewer DCA hours out of our own core resource. And as I talked about before, the reason for that is our higher abstraction, and the main abstraction, or the abstraction we saw that reduction in hours came from is sickness. We lost just over 9,000 more hours to sickness this July than we did last July. Annual leave was more or less the same. Training was more or less the same. So the only significant difference was within our sickness. And as Richard said, the health and well-being of our staff is being impacted without a doubt by the fact that the delays we're seeing at hospital, which I'll move on to in a minute. And the other areas it's impacting on is our ability to put overtime out, or people picking up overtime. So July to July again, there was 4,000 fewer DCA hours put out and 1,000 fewer FRV hours. So people aren't picking the overtime up, and the feedback we're getting up from that is staff don't want to be stuck at the hospital doing one job a shift and then stuck on managing a patient on the back of ambulances for hours on end. So it is impacting on our resource. And then moving on to hospitals. So in the month of July, we lost 15,000 or just over 15,000 hours to hospital delays. So you've heard me say this before, but to just put some context in that, we put out around 16,500, 17,000 hours in Northamptonshire in DCAs. So in essence, more or less, we closed Northamptonshire for the month of July due to the delays we saw at hospital. And it was 6,000 more hours than we saw last July. And in the middle week, when we had the heat wave, couple of days, we lost over 4,000 hours in that 1 week to hospital delays. And that's despite us taking 7,000 fewer attendances, or there were 7,000 fewer attendances this July compared to last July. So we still lost 6,000 more hours, despite the fact we arrived at the hospital 7,000 times fewer this year. And our post handover, we averaged around 171 hours a day, so 5,700 hours we lost to post handover. That's slightly up on June on the average, and we believe that's down to the introduction of the new EPRF, the electronic patient record form, going onto the iPad in July, rolled out across all divisions. We've got some plans to deal with that, how we're going to tackle that in September, which I'll update further through the Finance Performance Committee, and then at next board we'll have a better update on what those actions have played out. And then from a non-conveyance point of view, so yet again we saw an increase in our non-conveyance, so taking less people to hospital. Our hear and treat for July was 16.4%. That's up from 14% last July. So another indication there of our inability to be able to respond, is meaning we're having to deal with more people through the phone. See and treat running at 33%, which again was up from 31%. So overall for the month of July, we conveyed only 50% or 50.5% of our patients compared to 55% last year. But of that, only 46% or 45.9% went to an A&E. The alternative, or the balance to that, about 4.6%, went other areas of the hospital. So again, this is evidence that our non-conveyance is supporting a reduction in the amount of people we are taking to hospital. But unfortunately, that left us in terms of our standards position. Our category 1 performance was 9 minutes 55, and our 90th percentile was 17:56. And our Cat 2 mean was 1 hour 20 against an 18-minute national standard, remember, and the 90th was 3 hours 4 minutes, again against a 40-minute standard. And the category 3, our mean was 4 hours 24, and our 90th was 11 hours 30. And if you remember that, the standard for the Cat 3 90th is 2 hours. So I'll happy to take any questions, Richard, on that or the paper as we put forward. Just bring the screen back up.
Thanks, Ben. I'm just wondering if it would be helpful for Nicola to give her quality update, and then we take it in the round one.
Yeah, if that's all right with everybody, what we'll do is we'll let Nicola come in on the quality side to update us on where she is, and then we'll have that overall conversation because the two inevitably are linked. Okay, so over to you, Nicola.
Thank you. And sadly, the performance that Ben has just described is having an impact on patient safety, and I'm afraid that patients are coming to harm. I'll update you on the current serious incident position because it has moved on since the time of the report being written. And we are actually now at 34 serious incidents having been reported year to date, 23 of which relate to delayed responses. So that's almost 70% of the SIs that we're reporting at the moment are related to delayed response. And as you might expect, the majority of those are occurring in the two systems where we have the greatest issues with hospital handover delays. So 14 of those are in the Lincolnshire system. So that's the Lincolnshire ICS area, but also North Yorkshire and the Humber, so the North Lincolnshire and Gaul hospitals. And then 7 within the Leicestershire and Rutland system. So this is having an impact, and I think what we can't lose sight of is behind each of those incidents is a family who have been impacted by this. We have had long discussions at our Quality and Governance Committee in relation to the increase in SIs, because we thought that last year was a difficult year with ending the year with 74 SIs reported, which was the highest number that we had reported. We're on target at the moment, if the current trend continues, to report 102 serious incidents by year end. So that's another record that we really do not want to break. As I say, we have had the discussions at Quality and Governance Committee, and we also had a focused meeting of the Clinical Quality Review Group, which is chaired by our coordinating commissioners, Derby and Derbyshire Integrated Care System, and attended by all of our associate commissioners. And that was really an opportunity for us to seek some assurance with regards to the actions that are being taken within the systems to address the issues that are outside of our control. As Ben said, there are things that we are still working on internally to improve our own efficiency, but much of the issues that impact on us are outside of our control. So we are continuing to escalate and work with those systems to seek assurance on the actions that are being taken to improve. So happy to take any questions, but I shall leave it there for now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nicola. Are you both okay now to respond to any questions that are coming up? Okay.
Yeah, of course.
VJ first, then William Pope. VJ.
Nicola, thanks very much for the update. So you referred to the focus meeting of the Clinical Quality Review Group. But my question is, are you noticing any difference, even if it's a slight improvement in terms of the assurances which you are getting? Because and the assurances, how are they manifesting themselves? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is that in the same report, there's a reference to a letter which was sent by NHS England on the 15th of July, and the expectation that patients shouldn't be waiting for more than 30 minutes. Did that have any impact? So that's one for Richard, I suppose.
Yeah, if I come back to the assurances that we've gained through the CQRG meeting, I think, VJ, that I'm taking some assurance from the fact that I think for the first time in a long time, I think people are now I feel, fully sighted on the risk and where the risk lies, and the fact that it isn't within our gift as a single provider to address. I am hearing about lots of actions that have taken place, and in fact I'm reviewing a particular action plan from one of the systems this week. Lots of green actions. I guess what me and Ben are not seeing that translate into is tangible improvements in the hospital handover delays that we are experiencing. And as Ben said there, 15,000 hours lost in July. Those are the sort of numbers that we were used to seeing during really busy winter months. So to see that in July, to me, is very concerning, and it's clear that there's still a lot of work to be done before we head into the busier winter period. We are following up from that CQRG meeting. So I've already had a meeting with my equivalents in the Leicester system. I have another meeting set up in a couple of weeks in the Greater Lincolnshire system. Myself, Richard, and the local management team from Lincolnshire are attending a summit for Yorkshire and Humber, so the North and North East Lincolnshire part of our patch. So there definitely is more recognition, and I think more talking about the issue and what the potential solutions may be. What I'm not seeing yet is that that's translating into tangible actions that are going to make a difference. Now, from the meeting that I had in Leicester, I did hear some things that give me some hope. So I know that they're just waiting at the moment to receive confirmation from NHS England for funding for a pre-transfer unit. And this, you might remember, we had the pod in Lincolnshire, the infamous pod. And there was a discussion about doing that again, and myself and Ben, and indeed the management team at LRI discussed that actually all that did last time was just move the problem a little bit further down the line, and people just ended up having long delays in the pod rather than on the back of an ambulance. So we didn't want to do that, and we came up with an alternative model, and the funding that they're waiting for is to actually enact that new model, which would be a pre-transfer unit. I was also assured that there is additional capacity being commissioned in the community, both for care home beds and intermediate sort of step down rehabilitation beds, and that is to deal with the issue that we hear raised all the time around the medically fit for discharge and delayed transfers of care. Whether that will be sufficient capacity to address the size of the issue that we're facing, I'm not sure, but I did get the sense that there is work in train that will help to relieve some of the pressure in the not too distant future. And I hope that I would be hearing similar things when I have the other meetings that I've got in Lincolnshire. And in terms of the NHS England letter, I was actually on call that weekend, and I think it was I'm not sure if it was the letter that had the impact, or whether it was just that people had done a lot of planning ahead of the anticipated heat wave. But we did certainly for the weekend days see significantly reduced hospital handover delays. Unfortunately, what we didn't see, VJ, was that being sustained into the week, and I think by the Thursday of that same week, we were back up to losing sort of 700 hours in a single day. So it was short-lived, and I can't necessarily relate that the impact was related to that letter, but Ben may wish to say more on that.
Ben, do you want to come back on that?
No, I agree. I'll go a step further. I don't think the letter had any impact. I think they planned, or the hospitals and ourselves planned for the weekend, and as Nicola said, it was a lot better over the weekend, but it soon bounced back to having really significant delays as we got into Monday, Tuesday, and it got worse as the week went on. And as I said in my update, that was the week we lost over 4,000 hours. I think though you have to look at the weekend or even the Friday, I think, as we led up to that, and it just shows it can be done. You know, it does show that when the system pulls together, we saw a much reduced number of hours lost, and therefore a much better performance in terms of our service delivery. So it can be done, and I think we've got to keep working with the systems to embed whatever they did there, or whatever we did then, to ensure that's sustainable and can be carried out for the whole of the month. Because Nicola says there are plans, we have seen them, and I think certainly in Leicestershire there is more focus than I've ever known on this. Certainly with a new leadership structure within the hospital. So I think there can be some optimism that we might see some of these actions stick over the coming weeks.
Can I just yeah, thank you. Just on the back of those comments and Vida, your question. So on the 16th of July, which was a Saturday, I participated in a meeting, a virtual meeting with other ambulance chief execs and the Secretary of State for Health, where it was absolutely clear of what the expectations were around systems to support the ambulance service to ensure that we can respond to our patients in a timely manner, and ensuring that our plans were adequate and robust to be able to deal with the expected rise in demand and the significant risk to life as a result of the heat wave, which was we did subsequently experience, and I think, as colleagues have described, those first that weekend and probably the Monday and half of Tuesday, we saw some distinct improvements, but sadly they weren't sustained. What I would say is that all of the systems of which we are a part of within the East Midlands have submitted ambitious improvement trajectories around their handover times, and indeed the Leicestershire system has currently got a plan which is in place to state that from September they will have no handover delays over 30 minutes. Now, that's something we welcome, that level of ambition, and of course that impact will be absolutely phenomenal on both our response to patients and our staff, but remain concerned as to how realistic that will be to be achieved in probably now slightly less than 4 weeks. But that's something which we will clearly be coming back to.
Okay. Just moving around the board. Was that okay? You concluded, PJ. Thank you. Will Hope.
Thanks, Karen. And actually, I've got 3 questions, if I may. My first one, I think, has been dealt with. I wanted to just check that the system, that as Richard and Ben made the point about it being these being system issues, that was recognised by the systems. But I think take assurance from what's been said that it is recognised. And then, of course, the next issue is, as Nicola said, but where's the impact? Actually, as a slight follow-up on that, shall I ask all my questions in one go, Karen, and then you can divvy them up?
Yeah.
Okay. On that last point, Karen saying, but we haven't seen a big. Nicola saying we haven't seen a big impact yet, or a sustained impact. Richard's point's very interesting, that there was a short-term impact around that 16th of July period. And I wonder, Richard, if it might be too complex an answer now for this meeting, of course, but so why was the impact not sustained? What happened that stopped that impact continuing? And then my 2 other points, Karen, of course, the system response is really important, and we totally want the systems to make the impacts that are necessary and support them in so doing. But of course, it's also important that we do everything that we can do as well. So I wonder if Richard and or Ben or Nicola would be able to comment on what else could we do? Is there anything else we can be doing, and what are we doing? And then I suppose my final point is really, I'm hoping that the board would say that the situation as described so far by our exec colleagues, we don't accept as being, if you like, normal. The point that Nicola made about we're now seeing patient harm, this isn't going to be normal, is it? We're not going to accept that as a board, that is a normalised situation or a normal situation that we accept. I'm asking that with a question mark, Karen. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'll come to Richard first of all, and then we'll follow up with Nicola and Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Will. And actually, your comment at the end there, Will, I think it's really important that not just from the ambulance service perspective, but as a system perspective, we do not normalise the situation, because the length of delays we experienced in response to our patients, and this is where I'm at pains to state to the system, these are system patients. Whilst they may manifest in the 3.9 system, they are ultimately part of that system. And therefore we all have to collectively accept our responsibility to ensure that we can do everything possible to see those demonstrable, sustainable improvements, because that's the key. Because as you quite rightly point out, the impact over a specific weekend and early part of the week was positive. Now we do have to put a slight health warning in that we saw a reduction in UEC demand. So demand, public patient behaviour was different, but equally there was an awful lot of focus and scrutiny within the system, and that was focused on flow, discharge, and the coming together of all parts of the health and social care system clearly had an impact. So quite rightly, the challenge has got to be, so why can't that happen all of the time? And this is where the new ICBs have really got to be able to say, it's been often described as the top priority in UEC is ambulance, where we are really feeling that significant problem. So we've got to really maintain our focus here, and absolutely ensure that we do not allow this to become normalised or indeed acceptable. And certainly for reassurance for the wider board, we as an executive team are very clear on how we are robustly taking this challenge forward with system colleagues. Will, sorry, there was another part of your question. Could you just remind me?
Why wasn't the weekend sustained?
Yeah.
And also, what can we be assured that we, EMAS, are doing everything we can?
Yes. So apologies, Will. So that part. An example here. I think this is where it's really important that we're good at the bits that we're in control of. And Ben gave a really powerful example around 999 call taking. So when you look at the English Ambulance Service, or indeed the National Ambulance Services, we are consistently one of, and often the top performer when it comes to 999 call pickup. And that's a really powerful example of where, when we grip a problem, we take on the challenges, and we accordingly and appropriately plan for those pressures. And we have good confidence we will see that continue. A slight challenge there is where there are pressures at a national level. Indeed, we end up taking more demand on behalf of other ambulance services because of sometimes their inability to be able to answer 3.9 calls in a timely manner. When we start getting to sort of operational delivery, as in front end double crewed ambulances and fast response vehicles, we have to equally make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to make sure we have an efficient and effective delivery. And in part, we are constrained at times where we have some shortfalls in our resource numbers, and this is around making sure that we can do everything possible to support our colleagues so that they're healthy and wanting to come to work, and to make sure that when they are at work, they can operate as efficient and effectively as possible. I would be wrong if I said today that is all absolutely as good as it could be. There is more that we can do, and we will continue to maintain that focus on those areas that we can directly influence. Thanks, Will.
Okay, Mark.
Thank you, Karen. I just wanted to pick up on that risk being shared. And I'm well aware of a challenge within LLR that we don't have the systems in place to be able to share risk completely. And I'm just wondering what's happening across the region in terms of systems being built to share risk. On the kind of wellbeing side of things, so I know in the performance report that there are issues around the number of people that are doing training, being developed, doing appraisals, and no doubt that will all have an impact on people's well-being. And I'm just wondering kind of what recovery plan we're looking at there to get that all back on track. And the other thing I was thinking through here is, how could we utilise the tool that we have in Workplace, which is being used by staff to provide peer wellbeing support to one another? So, for example, there's some very light-hearted things there about photographs of pets and gardening, through to far more serious things like people talking about mental health. I do think we should note it can be used as a tool to promote wellbeing, and it is being used as a tool, but maybe as a board we could look to better utilise it. And Karen, I am visiting Northampton A&E tomorrow, and also the PTS service at the end of the month. Questions on wellbeing will be well at the top of my list, so I'll be making sure that's kind of fed into the appropriate channels.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark. And you make some very important points there.
Yeah, I think actually, in part, probably Nicola could just probably give a little assurance around the sort of that the regional groups around quality oversight, around what discussions take place there, and how we ensure that the seriousness of the situation is understood, but equally we can ensure that risks are understood, accepted and spread across the system in the right place. And then what I'm probably going to suggest, Kerry could very briefly just make reference to the extraordinary board discussion that we had a couple of weeks ago around the staff wellbeing area, because you're very right, Mark, to raise that, because that's a very important aspect. So Nicola, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you. And just to give you some assurance, Mark, the follow-up to the previous CQRG meeting, so the meeting that we're going to hold in August is going to be a follow-up in terms of identifying where the risks are across the whole of the pathway and looking at how we can shift and share risk. So I think I think we're now at a point where there's some mutual understanding. I think the next stage is then agreeing some of those behaviours and actions that we want to see in different parts of the system, be that primary care, be that community services, to mitigate the risk that we are currently holding within our service. So there's absolutely the forum for that, and I think as a result of both myself and Leon raising this topic at every single chief nursing officer and medical director regional meeting that we hold with NHS England, there are plans for a regional joint meeting of the chief nursing officers and medical directors from all of the systems and all of the individual providers to address this very issue. So I'll be able to feed back from that. I don't think we have a date for that yet, unless Leon knows differently, but yeah, there's definitely more forums now where exactly that topic about how can we share this risk are taking place.
Karen, do you mind if I just come in on that point, because rather than move on? Yeah, I think Nicola's right. I think we've managed to get that message across now around sharing the risk. However, I'm not sure at times it is shared. I still think we end up with a lion's share. Well, it's played out, isn't it, through our incidents. I think when the going gets tough, I think we end up carrying the vast majority of the risk, you know, because we have no other alternative to but hold them on our stack. So I think it is understood, but I don't think we've got there yet in terms of sharing that risk as well as we probably could across all the system. I think A&Es are probably sharing a bit of it, but beyond that, I think it's us and the A&E, overcrowding A&E departments. So I still think there's more that can be done on balancing that risk further across community services in particular.
Okay, thanks, Ben. We're going to have to move on a little bit. Leon, is that patiently racing?
Thanks, Chairman. Very quickly, I just wanted to put on record my great thanks to Richard Henderson with his digital national lead hat on, and Will Legg and the digital transformation team for getting those iPads out there and functional in short order this summer. It's had a huge impact on frontline care delivery. The old GTAC EPR, electronic patient record system, was creaking, and we knew that, and we were tracking some of the problems with that. But to now have access to up-to-date data for the clinical audit and research team has been really critical. So I just wanted to put on record my great thanks for that.
Thanks, Leon.
Okay, much appreciated. Going down, Gary, you had your hand up and it went down. Has your question been answered now?
My question has been answered. I have a question on finance. We haven't got to that yet. I don't know if you want to ask that now, or we're going to bring Mike in to talk about finance later. I can wait if we are.
Yeah, I'd like, if we can, just to conclude on the clinical quality side of things, and then we'll pick up with the finance, Gary. So thanks. Yes. We'll come back to you. Perminder. Perminder has lost contact. We'll move to Mike.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Hi.
Thank you, Karen. Oh,
sorry, Perminder's back in. Sorry, Mike. We're with you in a minute. Perminder.
Sorry, Mike. Thank you, Karen. I just wanted to ask, with regards to ICBs, I know and appreciate and acknowledge that they're very new boards that have been set up. They're in their honeymoon period, but equally, I believe it's the time where we can be more influential at those meetings of those board the ICBs are having and undertaking. And I know at board we've spoken at great lengths previously as to how we coordinate those discussions. How do we make sure that the different ICBs that we can pick up all the intel from those, share it, and then make sure we've got a very much a united messaging at these boards. So I just wanted to understand from you, Richard, in terms of where are we with ICBs, because they are going, that seemed quite an influential board that should be able to then take action that can help the system move away from the situation we're in at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. So you're absolutely right. ICBs are the new system level accountability boards for each of the counties which exist. We have a level of engagement with all systems. I think you're absolutely right. Your point you raised, they are in their early days. There is some slight challenge around the constitution of them and how ambulance is represented in those, because as I think as we all know, we don't formally have a seat at the ICB, but there are other forum parts of the ICB of which we are actively engaged in. One of the so whilst we are, from an EMAS perspective, we have a footprint in all of those systems, and I feel as though we have a strong voice. I think we are absolutely heard. All systems have to make reference to their ambulance level of performance and handover delays within those. What I think we have right now is an opportunity with myself and Karen to probably reconsider how we want to be represented within those local systems, and certainly from an executive and non-executive perspective, see how that is best aligned. We do also have other forums where there's the regional commissioning board, which is made up of the accountable officers, of whom we're currently in regular communication with, but then also the subgroup of that, in theory, is the strategic delivery board, of which is in existence. So I think we need to undertake almost a mapping exercise of all these varying different forums, because what I don't want us to do is almost get to a place where we've got multiple platforms when we're talking about it, but then there's limited things actually happening as a result of it. I think we've got to make sure, as a regional organisation, we're quite small in comparison to each of the ICBs. We need to be able to spread ourselves appropriately and not thinly, because I think there's the real risk that we end up not having sufficient time in any system if we get this wrong. So probably not an exact answer for you, but I think this is an opportunity for both Karen and myself, in partnership with the executive and non-executive team, to have probably a careful consideration how we plan to engage moving forward.
Okay, thanks, Richard. And just on that, Perminder, obviously as the new incoming chair, it is my plan in terms of networking to over the next month to meet with all of the ICB chairs, bearing in mind that we cover 5. So that will be the start of it for me in terms of our conversations. But again, as Richard's just said, we need to give some thought to how we as a board, connect with each of the ICBs and make sure that we've got the footprint well established in those.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm going to move this on. Sorry.
thank you. No, and that was my point. I think we don't want to be late to the party on these. So it's great that it's on your radar in any event, and let's hope that we can engage more sooner than later. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mike, back to you.
Yeah, thanks. And just to add on about the system engagement, Richard and I met the council officers like 8 days ago, actually, and the turnout was excellent. Either the council officers or deputies there looking very much at the risk, both the clinical and financial risk. And what we've done, we've enacted elements of the side letter to the contract now, looking at how we can apportion some of the financial elements of the risk out, which may dwell very much into the question that Guy's going to ask later on. But recognising that, just as Ben was saying, the clinical risk at the moment does sit with us, but making some movement in terms of recognising what the financial impact of these handover delays are upon the trust.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Kerry?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in on the wellbeing elements that we've picked up as part of this conversation. I think the first thing to say really is that resolution of the handover and the system challenges that have such a big impact will be the thing that has the biggest impact in terms of a positive impact on staff health and wellbeing. But in the absence of that, I would just remind colleagues of the vast and comprehensive health and wellbeing support that is available to our staff and utilised, and I update on a quarterly basis the board on all of those different types of interventions that we have available for our staff. But just thinking back to post the last workforce committee, the extraordinary meeting that we had of board members to talk specifically about health and wellbeing. And at that meeting, we did also talk about some of the tactical operational actions that were taking place, supported by local managers who were providing that level of support to our staff on a daily basis whilst they're experiencing these challenges. So, and I think just picking up on Mark's point as well about workplace, we do proactively utilise workplace a lot actually to support health and wellbeing, reminding our colleagues of all the different support that's there and having lots of those more informal networks through workplace as well. So we will continue to do that. So I just wanted really to reference those discussions that we'd had at that extra meeting as well on the 20th of July. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kerry. Vijay, you come back in.
Thanks, Chair. I do acknowledge the points which Kerry has made and all the support mechanisms which are in place. I think I would just reiterate the point which I was trying to make at the board meeting as well, which is that what's in our control and what can we do even more if possible to get our staff away on time, to get so that they can have, they know when they're starting, when they're finishing, and also they can take their leave and think about taking overtime, if they want to. So we create conditions where we are able to acknowledge the basic things which might be in our control, and we're able to offer that support. And I think we need to continue to work on that. And secondly, there was something in the paper yesterday about a contract that the NHS is signing with St. John Ambulance, where they may be offering more support to the ambulance sector. Is that something which will percolate its way down to us? And maybe it's early days, but is there any thought how that might be used to support our staff further?
Okay, thanks, Vijay. Ben, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I'll just come in quickly on that. Vijay, yes, this is actually something that's been in place for quite some time now. It was in place throughout COVID. It's just been, the contract's just been formalised over the last 6 months. Unfortunately, we don't have control over that, so we can't request resource. It's given to us nationally through the National Ambulance Coordination Centre. So they look at pressure in the system and then apportion that resource. So we do get some. But it's not something I guess I could say we can rely on daily.
Okay. We've got no more hands. I've just got a question for you, Ben. When you talked about the conveyance rate, the 50.5% that we send, of which you said 4% went to other areas. And throughout this conversation, I've heard a lot about the acute setting. Do we, or is there full engagement with the local authority in terms of how we route patients, and can we avoid taking them to A&E but divert into other healthcare or social care settings?
Yeah.
Or will that be done through the ICBs?
It will continue to be done. I think there's been an awful lot of work done on trying to get the patient to the right place for them, and I think that has to continue. We haven't seen, we saw a jump in terms of non-A&E attendances, but it's sort of plateaued over the last 6 months. We haven't really seen that change. So I think there is further work and opportunity there for more to go to those environments. I think we've just got to be cautious there, though, that we don't create a second queue. So we have a queue at the EDs, and then we have a queue at these other SDECs or wherever it may be that's hidden from us in some regards. So I think we've got to keep a close eye on that.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to hand over back to Richard to continue with the paper and kind of not to conclude on it on the overall paper, but certainly on the quality agenda. I think a key message that we have to be wedded to as a board is that this is not normalised, and it is an extreme situation where patients are being put at risk, and we acknowledge that. And it may well be either at some point in the future, either at a board development session or in fact at a board, where we bring all this information together, because clearly there is a tremendous amount of work. What I think we're not seeing is major change as a consequence of all the work that's going on. But let's just park that up for now. But it is something that we will come back to, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. I think the only thing I would like to add is probably give an opportunity for Mike just to come in from a financial perspective and just give an update on the financial position, and then I'll take any final questions on the paper, Karen, and conclude.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, that's most kind, Richard. Thanks very much. So we are showing a deficit. We had planned to have a deficit because our expenditure at the beginning of the year was slightly higher than our income, things like the refurbishment of HP and things. But our deficit was in excess of our plan, mainly, and not mainly, in its entirety, because of the slippage on our ability to get the money out of our cost improvement programme. There's also been a few ups and downs in relation to maintenance and other items, but they're just the general day-to-day expenditure. But our big cost pressure is our cost improvement programme. We've realised very little cash to date in relation to target, and the reason we kept that is most of that, or the vast majority of it, is on the productivity gains. I.e., we'll need less resource to do the same output. And while we've got such extensive amounts of people waiting to have an emergency ambulance, it would be totally inappropriate to reduce our resource output at the moment. I've done a paper for our systems, the ICBs we serve. That's going. I'm just discussing that with Joint Care Derbyshire, our host ICB, in terms of how we play that into the finance directors locally. We've discussed the principle with the council officers last week, which and I did. Great acceptance there that their inability to hit the trajectories, improve handover delays is going to have that impact on us. We can't possibly start reducing our resources as improved productivity. Productivity has improved a little bit, so that's good news. We are making some gains there in terms of on-scene times, the pre-handover, the post-handover. So all going the right way, but not at the moment we're in a position where we can take any cash out. So that's dominating our financial position. I'll put that in the report to NHSE. So at the moment we are currently forecasting a shortfall on that at the end of the year, circa 6 million, on the basis of other parts of our SIP programme will claw back by the end of the year. So we're probably one of the first trusts to submit a forecast deficit at the moment, but that's going to be contained within Joint Care Derbyshire's overall financial plan. And I sat down with Joint Care Derbyshire's DOS last week in terms of how we're going to manage that. It's probably not going to be that easy because both the Derby hospitals and Chesterfield hospitals are drifted away from as well. And their problem basically is actually getting their efficiencies out of the system, because all the systems overheating nobody at the moment can take bed or resources out to reduce costs because of all the problems we've got there. So it's going to be, I think, a tough year coming up. So I'll just stop there. And I know that you had a question, Gary, that you were going to ask.
Gary.
Okay, so thank you. I've actually got a couple of questions, and both relate to the comments around the efficiency plan. I mean, looking at, we're at 0.4 million after one quarter against a 7.6 million target. I guess my first question was of two. First question will be, what's our level of confidence as an organisation in achieving those savings in terms of the 7.6 million? That's the first question. And I think the second one is, given that I think Ben mentioned before, 16,000 hours lost in handover delays in this month alone, and I'd attribute a cost of about 2 million to that by looking at kind of our internal costs. So if it's about a 2 million cost, are we minded at all to, as a system being minded to forego any of that efficiency saving to help us fund that efficiency cost?
Yeah, I think I must have waffled done a bit because I thought I'd answer those questions, guys. So the first one is actually, no, we haven't got any confidence we're going to hit that 7 million. That's why I forecast a 6 million deficit at the year end. So we're not going to hit that. Not while we've got those levels of outstanding requests for ambulances. The second one, yes, we have, and as I said, Richard and I met the camp officers last week. Went through what the financial impact on us, and we've done it. And the paper have done it in two ways. The first way was using the jointly commissioned ORH Deloitte report, where we costed up an ambulance at £133 an hour. If we'd put that in as a bill, using quarter one extrapolated for the year, that'd be £22 million bill to the ICB. So it's that sort of magnitude. And that gives you an idea of what the size of the problem is. What I have done actually is approach a different way. So, and some of this comes onto the paper we've got later on in looking at PAS and our activity. Well, what is our likely cost impact on us by not being able to achieve the efficiency program and maintain a level of output? And that consists of 3 or 4 things. One is the non-achievement of the sick. Secondly, he's maintaining our staffing at current levels. The third one is actually putting additional overtime into the system, then to take account of any gaps in the rotas and meet additional demand. And that comes to about 16 million. So we've approached in two ways in relationship with having a good discussion with ICBs. I'm meeting Joint Care Derbyshire this week. We're going to circulate or socialise that with the finance directors probably next week or the week after. Hopefully reach some sort of conclusion, maybe next month or the month after. So at the moment we've got an agreement in principle that that there's a cost to us. That there's cost not only a direct cost but also our ability to achieve our cost improvement programme, and that's out in there in discussion with our systems at the moment. So what we will have, and going back to original comments, the clinical risk will unfortunately still sit with us and still be patients that are on our stack. However, we'll have some financial mitigation so hopefully to take the financial risk away from us.
Thank you.
You're right with that, Gary?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Will Pope.
Thanks, Karen. And Gary's asked the same question I was going to ask about the SIPs and the non-pay. So thanks for that, Gary, and your answers, Mike. Couple of follow-ups on that, if I may. There's 3 really. First of all, Mike, what's the current cash position, if you've got it in your head, or pop it on the email to me if it's not? And in the current forecasts, have the national staff NHS salary increases, which I realise are in dispute, but have they been factored in, or is there an additional pressure still to come? And then my final question, the extra national monies that have been announced, the 150 million for ambulance services nationally, of which we might get 13 million, once it's been divvied up in detail. How will that work, and will any of that be lost in Joined Up Care Derbyshire? Thanks, Karen.
Well, yeah, there's three questions. So the first one, the cash is fine at the moment. Last time we get about 18 million in the bank and things. So we've been right there. The cash dropped down quite dramatically in the year because we had all the vehicles to pay for. Remember, we got the Fiats delivered or sort of delivered at the back end of last year, and we paid for all this year. So a bit of a cash movement there. Pay award, interesting. We don't know the details of the pay award yet. It's going to be fully funded at national level. We've done a bit of talking about an increase in tariff of 1.7%. We've done a bit of modelling around that. That leaves us short, probably about $1 million and a bit short. So if that's a bit, and mainly that's because we employ a lot of people. Our cost base is different to national average because we have a high amount of people compared to our total turnover. So in the hospital, a lot of your costs be eaten up in things like big bits of kit, MRI scanners and X-ray machines and things. We don't have that, so we're very much a staff-weighted type cost base. So when we get pay awarding, the national averages don't apply to us, and that's always been the case. Every time you get a national pay award, it's EMAS differentially. So we've raised this as an issue. We haven't seen the final details yet about how that's going to be applied because the pay award goes, the money will go into the ICBs and then filter to us. Now, we'll have to make some sort of pitch to say that our cost base is different and we deserve more. But every trust will be saying that's for certain. So we'll just have to work for that. The 150 million, the next paper goes to that. Well, we've got the money. It's coming. It's in our books. The only bit we're arguing about is the Humberland Coastal Vale, where we're saying it's 850, they're saying it's 550. So we've got a £300,000 difference there. It's a difficult one because we don't see any detail of what goes into Humberland Coast baseline allocations like we do with our own ICB. We don't know what they've actually got. So, but NHSIE are helping us in terms of dealing with Humberland Coastal Vale on that. So that will resolve itself one or the other. It was at the start of the process 850 or 0. Now got 850 or 550. So it's moved on quite a bit since I did the last briefing to the board. So I hope that answered your questions, Will.
Okay. Thank you. Just a question from myself, Mike. You know, in terms of all ambulance trusts are obviously experiencing the same challenges as us operationally. Where do we sit in relation to the financial positions and the efficiency in comparison to our peer group?
That's an interesting question, that, because and I've got to say I can answer bits of it because what we trying to do is actually there's quite a few things in relation to where we sit. So, I've been working with a new model ambulance group in terms of looking at how we can enhance the data, because one of the things we don't know is how well funded we are. Because so in terms of our cost per head of population, how are we compared to West Midlands, East England and things? Because that begins the idea of how well you use your resources. So we don't know that. Financially, all the ambulance trusts, I had a DOS meeting last week, but we're all struggling. We're all struggling because of meeting the efficiency programme. Because as I said earlier, our main cost is our people. The only way you're going to make productivity gains is get the people with productivity. Everybody's got this massive amount of people on the stack. So we're all struggling there. In terms of efficiency, we're probably in the middle of the pack. Some of the upper ones at 5%. You've got London Trust are in there at 0%. That's their ICBs are taking the view that they can't make an efficient ambulance service with funding, and so but maybe about the 3% about the middle. The national average, I think, for the NHS is just over 4% for all trusts. So we're below the national average, about in the middle of the pack for ambulance trusts. So yeah, and I'm coming in. The expectation is that every organisation breaks even at the end of the year. That's been made very clear. Joint Care Derbyshire has been escalated. So myself, the other Director of Finance from Joint Care Derbyshire, I've got to go and see NHSE. I think it's next week or the week after to be told that we've got to break even at the year end. So the next F&P, I'll report back where we're going with that. So yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much, Mike. Thanks for that. Richard, do you want to conclude your paper?
Yes, thank you very much. So the only thing I would say, I think we've covered a significant amount of items this morning. I think it's fair to say we are all equally remain concerned around the level of delivery, which has been compounded and impacted by, to a degree, matters which are out of our control. But if I can just change the tone slightly, what I do want to do is also take it as an opportunity to thank across the whole of the organisation, because I am absolutely mindful of the levels that colleagues are having to work at, the pace that colleagues are having to work at on a sustained basis. This is it's no mean feat what we are achieving, which is directly as a result of the absolutely outstanding efforts of right from our senior leaders right through to our front end colleagues, regardless of the discipline which they work in. This is a full team effort across the organisation, and I've just pass on my heartfelt thanks for what everyone's doing day in and day out, and I appreciate how tough it is, but clearly we have to do everything we possibly can to support them in fulfilling their roles. So thank you, Karen.
Okay, thanks for sharing. And I would echo that, despite all the challenges and the questions that we've asked, we do acknowledge how difficult a time it is across the board and everybody's efforts. So thank you. VJ, did you want to come back in?
Chair, if I could very quickly, I think you and Richard have touched on it. We've talked about the challenges, and they are significant challenges. However, we can take a great deal of assurance from the CQC report. If we look at it, the way our colleagues are working, 3 bullet points regarding the staff, brilliant, gives us great assurance in terms of the extraordinary efforts which they're making. And I don't want to just confine my comments to the frontline staff. It's the whole team, the senior team, because you don't get a report like this without the whole system working together within our organization. So really big well done. This was only 3 months ago. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, VJ. So moving us on, slightly later than time planned, but I think that was time well spent on Richard's report and the dialogue that we had. So paper 101, we're asked to take for assurance. Will, Leg.
Thanks very much, Karen. And yeah, just having a quick look back then at the 21-22 strategic objectives. We said when we set these objectives out back in 2021, actually, that every year we would bring a review of where we'd got to against these, remind ourselves of the strategic objectives as well, and try and consider whether we were improving, fairly neutral, or deteriorating against the different strategic objectives that we set ourselves at that point in time. So this paper sets out, obviously, as I've said, the current strategic objectives. It sets out our targets, where we were in 2021 and where we got to in 21-22, and assesses the change with a little bit of narrative against each one. Overall, 12 of our 20 we're improving, 4 we're neutral, and 4 we're deteriorating against. And that's at a very high level. Clearly, there's a level of subjectivity in that too. We've used the performance metrics and KPIs where we've got data to be able to make a kind of an objective view of that. But clearly, some of this is subjective as well. The narratives against each of the different KPIs, I'm not proposing I'll go through in this board item verbally. Obviously, board members have had the paper prior to the meeting, so are able to see that. And then Appendix C, just for completeness, shows the differences on our response programme standards, which relate to our strategic objective R6, just in detail. So that explains the deteriorating position there as well. So hopefully that is helpful for board members. I'm happy to take any questions, but the paper here today, Karen, is for assurance to the board around those key performance indicator updates, and also for us to try and consider if we will continue to keep these strategic objectives and key performance indicators in place until we review our vision, strategy and objectives later in the year. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. Any questions for Will? Will Pope.
Thanks, Karen. And not a question actually, but just to support Will's proposal there that we leave everything in place and review again. There are dangers if you're not careful of changing your strategic objectives. Indeed, sometimes one sees other organisations potentially, if you like, in the face of challenge, lowering their objectives and becoming less ambitious. And I don't think we should lower our ambition. So, but just to say, Karen, support Will's proposal.
Okay, thanks. Mark.
I just wanted to sort of note the real positives contained within this report. Despite everything that's going on, there's some real shoots of things improving, actually. And that's just absolutely fantastic to see. And I know that we're, you know, every meeting that we have, we talk about what's going wrong, but actually there's a lot that's going right. The only question I've really got around the kind of deterioration in performance, it's a note in the report around how people, so there's been a reduction in the number of people saying they'd want to work for EMAS or recommending it as a place to work. I guess we can guess the reasons behind it, but actually what our staff saying is the reason for that.
Thank you, Mark. And yes, you're absolutely right. That is an unfortunate part of these metrics does show that. And what I'd say is across the whole of the NHS, actually, as part of the staff opinion survey where this question is posed, across the whole of the NHS, that indicator has gone down, broadly speaking. And some of that will be fatigue after the response to the COVID pandemic, clearly, and the quantity of work undertaken by staff on the front line, but also the constant pressure. So following on from the pandemic, obviously there's a backlog of need within the public and a relentless pressure which applies too. And I think it's when we look at those statistics in isolation, they can feel quite difficult to swallow, because, you know, we would all want to be improving that metric, clearly. I think when we lay it against some of the other environmental challenges that we've found in the organisation and our staff are experiencing as we speak, I think it's quite positive in as much as it hasn't deteriorated vastly through that period. It feels as though there is still some green shoots to me there, although clearly in pure KPI terms, it is quite challenging. Kerry, I don't know if there's anything else from your perspective. Obviously, you've done a lot of detailed work on the staff opinion survey and the questions in detail.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, I absolutely agree with your response there, Will, in terms of we've seen that across the whole of the NHS. I think the thing that counters that a little bit for EMAS is that when we are compared to our peers, our other ambulance services, we were also the highest performing trust in the context of the questions linked to the levels of morale amongst staff. So yes, there has been a general decline, but actually our staff, given the circumstances, there is still some positivity there as well. But yeah, I don't think I can add any more to what Will has already said. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Gary?
Thank you, and I'd agree with Mark as a starting point that there's lots of positives in here, and that's really good to see given what we've gone through in the last couple of years. I know we're not going into the detail here, but I want to just ask a general question which relates from R4, which talks about overall cycle time, job cycle time. Both the periods we're comparing of during COVID, so COVID is not the reason, but I want to just really understand the general reasons as to why the overall cycle time is going the wrong way. And it's just, I guess it's really just a chance to Ben to put into the arena kind of what type of things that could be typically.
If I start, and I'll let Ben have a quick think about that as well. So certainly some of the initial things that we've seen, and there, as you know, Gary, there's a piece of work going on in EMAS at the moment, or in the efficiency programme, really digging down into this and having a look. It's important to remember that the overall job cycle time, we're not just talking about a specific element of job cycle time there. So this is the overall cycle time, which includes handover delays, both pre and post. So just as a straightforward example of that increase in time, we've also seen a proportionate increase in time in lost hours at hospital. So when we're handing over patients, so that translates into the full job cycle time that we see here. So that's one kind of obvious answer. The other is around access to information and making sure that we're taking patients to the right locations if we're taking them anywhere at all. So Leon referred earlier on to using the electronic patient record on scene and on the iPads. That has the facility to look up medications, some rudimentary primary care information for patients, and those improvements were brought in during 1920 and have been continuing to roll out, and staff have been using them more and more with patients. And as you would imagine, when hospitals are under pressure and when we're seeing patients face to face in the community where we think there might be there might just be a chance that we don't have to take them and sit them in a large queue at a hospital. We're taking every moment we can to try and do that for that patient, which means looking up their history on the EPRF system. It means making phone calls to primary care, to community teams, trying to get those referrals, trying to get that access. And that all ekes out minutes on scene, as you would imagine, as part of that job cycle, because occasionally that doesn't come to fruition and we still take the patient to hospital because there isn't any alternative. So you've almost got a double whammy there. You're spending lots of extra time trying to keep them out of hospital, and then you take them in and then you sit in a queue. So those can be really quite long job cycles because of that reason. So I think there's a few different reasons that we've got a longer time. The question is about improvement going forward, of course, and that's where that efficiency work plays in. So Ben, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to that.
No, I don't think there's anything I can add to that. I think, as you allude to, I think that work around really getting underneath that is the key, because we have differences across our own divisions as well. And it's understanding that in more detail, and that will enable us to try and make some changes to improve or get a standardised across all the divisions.
Thanks, both.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Gary. Mark, your hand's still up. Is that a legacy hand, or did you want to come back in?
It's legacy, sorry.
Okay, all right. Okay, it was just interesting, Will, looking at the ones where we have got a deteriorating position against the strategic objectives directly relate back into the system failures that we've got going on across the whole system at this moment in time. So, so we are trapped in terms of what actually we can do with them. I mean, some will be picked up through the efficiency programme, etc. But yeah, generally speaking, there was no great surprises there. Okay, so we're asked to take that for assurance, which I believe we can do, Will. So thank you for that update. Moving us on to the next paper then, Mike, paper 102, which is the urgent and emergency ambulance service and PTS contracts and the financial plan.
Yeah, thanks so much. So this is the end result of a long process, and we looked at the contract and the financial planning. And so it picks back to Gary's point about you made earlier about break even and the efficiency programs. I'll just perhaps explain that a little bit. So what we got here is the financial plan and the contract based very much on our arithmetical process. So we go back to conversation before. There's nothing in here about adjustments to demand, quality, or activity. The process is just about getting the NHS back into an even financial position. So we submitted the plans. We brought the trust board here. The delegated authority was given to me and Richard Lacy, the chair, the FNP, and the chair of the trust board, within the parameters agreed, all agreed. So the contract very much at the top end of what we're expecting. The plan's very much in relation to H2x2 with adjustment. The key bit of the plan is the cost improvement programme. So we submitted a break-even plan, but very much dependent on achieving a 3% SIP, which, going back to your question, Chair, is that reasonable compared to the rest of the NHS? Yes, it's not unreasonable in terms of its percentage. So that's the plan in there. But now then we submitted the Q1 returns, and what we're seeing in the Q1 returns, so after this plan was submitted, that at the moment the confidence in achieving the SIP because of the thing we talk about in relation to handover delays is very low. So at the moment we're forecasting that as a deficit. However, we do have mitigation in place and enacting the risk share agreement, which if that comes in, then that brings back into balance or thereabouts. So it's here for information. We've agreed and signed the contract at the delegated authority given to ourselves, but I will stop there. Hopefully answered your original question, Gary, in terms of where there. So and yours as well, Chair, in terms of the level of SIP. So if you tick those two off, I'll stop and take any more questions. Okay.
Did you want to come back in on that, Gary?
No, Mike's preempted my question very well and answered appropriately.
We've been working too long together, Gary, I think.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Mike. Mark?
It might just help with my understanding. Is the 150 million that's been given to ambulance services to help them break even, is that a recurring amount? So will it be coming every year?
Well, there's two things. It wasn't given to ambulance services to break even because some didn't get enough to break even. For us, it just coincidentally it got to thereabout. Yes, it's gone into baseline ICB funding levels, so that's good news, Mark. Actually, so the danger, of course, with these things is that those that have been in the health service a while, a lot of this money comes in non-recurrently. So it sort of puts a sticking plaster over it, but the wound's still there. But this is into ICB baselines.
And ICBs will be expected to just pass the whole amount across every year.
No, they won't. We've been negotiating the contract. And it's in there. So every year we renegotiate contracts, and you know what we need to do then is start playing in some of the quality of issues we've been talking about for last about handover delays, the impact on us. So I think next year's contract will look very different to this one. But your starting point would be this year's contract. But where it goes from there will depend on local affordability, local pressures, our ability to negotiate a contract, all those sort of things. There's no guarantee that we'll get this level of funding going forward. It could be more, it could be less, but you know, that's what we'll do. What we'll decide in next year's contracting process. There is a separate piece of work going on, which I'll be feeding back to FMP, and that Julian Kelly's leading on at national level in terms of right-sized ambulance trust. So looking at your population, your activity, your performance, your productivity in terms of what's the right number for an ambulance trust. Now, we're expecting something round about August, September on that. And hopefully Rich and I can ask Julian when we see him a week on Friday what's going on. But that will probably have a bigger impact in terms of next year's contracting process than you know this 150 million. But we'll just have to wait and see. That answers your question, Mark?
It does. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Be lovely if it was recurrent, wouldn't it, Mike?
Yeah, well, yes, I mean, but we know we're part of the system, and you know we've got to fight our corner. I'm to fair, we've been quite successful down the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good in that there is that national recognition. So you know, it's good from that point of view. Okay, no more hands are up, Mike. So we're asked to consider the update in relation to the urgent and emergency and the PTS contracts, and consider the Trust's financial plan, which was approved by the Chief Exec and the DOF. Okay, all right with everybody? Thank you. So moving us on, I'm going to keep us going for the time being, if that's all right with people. We're going on to the assurance section of the agenda, and first of all we've got the Quality and Governance Committee record of business. So over to you, Nicola, please.
Yeah, there are two alerts on the records of business that you have from both the June and the July meeting that both relate to the numbers of SIs that we've been reporting and operational performance, which obviously are both linked. And I think we've covered those when we covered that in the Chief Executive's report. So there was nothing else I wanted to add. Thank you.
Okay, I think what important to note there, Nicola, is that the level of concern that we've discussed and spent time on this morning as a board is mirrored by the conversation that goes on at QGC. I think the only point that I would bring up is the, and we see this at QGC, is the level of support that we've got from our commissioning organisation. I think that's been played out and is really, really helpful.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving us on then to the FPC record of business, Mike.
Yeah, well, I think we've covered up most of these items, Chair. The financial performance we've done, the operational performance we've done, the efficiency programme we've done. So I'd just take any questions there. I think we've covered most of these off already.
Okay, no hands, no questions. All right, thanks, Mike. Audit committee record of business, Mike, held on the 30th of May.
Yeah, this is the approval of the accounts, and it'd be fair to say that I think subject to Gary confirmed this, that the audit was very complimentary about the standard of the accounts and working papers, especially the analytical analysis, which answered all the questions that the non-execs would ask before they even asked them. So it was quite a successful process, given that working remotely again. So, and the auditors were saying, I'll speak that turn that ours are the best accounts they've dealt with this year. So I'll just, anybody non-execs want to contradict that, but yeah. Richard told me not to mention that, by the way, but I thought I couldn't resist it.
Okay. No comments. I will say that obviously, as a member, a former member of the audit committee, I can confirm that yourself and your team, Mike, were extremely well appreciated, and that was good to hear. And it's not the first year, so I think there's a message there in terms of keeping up good work. Okay.
Just to add, Chair, on that point, from the Chair of the Audit Committee perspective, we do also meet with the external auditors and the internal auditors without Mike there to blow his own trumpet. And and they do support that view.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Moving us on then to the Workforce Committee record of business, Kerry.
Thanks, Chair. So the second record of business had 2 alerts on there. The first one we've already spoken about in terms of the impact on staff health and wellbeing, which we've covered earlier in the Chief Executive's report. And then there was a second alert in relation to sickness absence, which Ben did report on as part of the Chief Executive's report. The only thing I would add to that is that there is an error in that the report indicates that the current year-to-date figure for sickness is 7.17. It's actually 8.17. So that's just an error that just needs correcting in the papers. Happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Okay, any questions on that? No. Kerry, sickness. Because I know just from something that we've read, there was a change in the reporting rules in terms of the inclusion of COVID, and then we didn't include COVID. Forgive my slight ignorance on the detail. Does the 8.1% exclude the COVID or include it?
It includes anybody that is diagnosed with a notifiable disease, which does include COVID. So those actually confirmed COVID are included in the 8.17. The periods of medical stand down, now referred to as authorised absence, are not part of the sickness absence figure.
Right, okay, so yeah, no, that's fine. So it's just to be clear, and that's the point that I wanted to make, that the 8.17% is actual sickness.
Actual sickness.
Yeah, but on top of that, we have the medical stand downs.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's just important that we acknowledge that in terms of the amount of sickness and stand downs that we're having to cope with at the moment. Yeah. Okay, Perminda's hand's gone up.
Sorry, Karen, you asked the question, so that was exactly my question, how COVID was being treated, so thank you. Sorry. Okay,
thanks very much. Great minds, Perminda. So moving us on to the governance section, and we're actually back on time now. Paper 107 for approval is the slavery and human trafficking statement. Nicola.
Yes, thank you. So it's a requirement of the Modern Slavery Act that we publish a statement on our website detailing how we ensure that we eliminate slavery from our business or supply chain. So it's good practice to review this on an annual basis. So it's coming here for its annual review. No changes to it have been required this year. So I'm just seeking approval to maintain the statement as it is. Thank you.
Okay, any questions, anybody? No. Okay, so take that as our approval, and thanks for that, Nicola. And the next governance report is from Karen.
Chair, I'll just slip out. Please, somebody, please let me know when I can come in. Thanks.
VJ, you can come in now. Was it on the last paper? Lost her.
Was she saying that she's leaving the meeting and then coming back in? Because
I don't know. I didn't hear it all.
She has left the meeting, Karen.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Rebecca. Okay. Well, we'll move on. We'll go.
I think it's because of her interest in
in
relation to the governance report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. She's chosen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Karen.
Okay. Thank you. So this is the regular governance report that you receive each meeting. There are 3 main things covered in this report. Some changes, minor changes to the terms of reference of 2 of the committees, and the board's asked to approve those. Also, the Workforce Committee has finalised its annual report and presents that to the board for assurance. And then finally, we've included something to deal with the temporary absence of yourself, Chair, in the next few weeks, so that we've got someone who is able to deputise in your absence.
Okay. Any questions? No. Will Pope.
Just a quick one, Karen. That was very good of VJ to duck out of the meeting for this item. So well done to VJ for that. You know, the proposal in the paper is that VJ temporarily deputises, but given the announcement this morning from Richard about yourself, could we save a job here and be much more simple and quick? Could VJ be the deputy chair now? Is that something we could do and just get a job done?
Karen's going to come back in on that.
Yes, there will be a procedure that we need to go through now that we have the chair in place. So we'll do that and then bring that back through the next board meeting for confirmation. It's not something that we are able to do at this meeting, and it wasn't anticipated when the papers went out that we would be in a position to announce the new chair at this meeting.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks for bringing that up, Will, but I am acutely aware and we will be moving on it fairly quickly. Okay, so we're asked to approve the terms of reference for the Workforce Committee, take assurance from the annual report to the Workforce Committee, and agree that VJ will temporarily be the deputy for the next 2 or 3 weeks until we get things moving. Okay, thanks, Karen. The next and final item on the agenda is the board assurance framework. Over to you again, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the first time that you've seen the revised board assurance framework with the detail in terms of mitigations and scoring and actions. There is still some work to do, but as you know from seeing this previously as a board, it is an evolving document, so it never is a final document. The risk owners are continuing to look through it, make changes in terms of identifying assurance and any additional actions that are required. In the front sheet, I have highlighted some changes that were proposed by the Workforce Committee in relation to risk scores. They're not incorporated into the document as yet because it's something for the board to consider. And also, as highlighted in the paper, the Finance and Performance Committee were due to meet after the papers went out, and they made one recommendation, and that was to increase the likelihood score on risk D2 to 5, and that's the risk that relates to the achievement of the financial targets. So that I'm asking the board to consider that along with the other recommendations from the Workforce Committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Mike?
Yeah, just about the recommendations, and having done these things numerous times before, I mean, when you get to 25, you talk about catastrophic event with certain loss of life and impact. Are we really saying that these are going to produce that sort of output? And the changes and visits here from the Workforce Committee, I mean, they've certainly they've an impact, but catastrophic to the organisation, it just seems a bit extreme. And it's very rare to see 25s on the board assurance framework, and they're usually around things like the financial plan or like we've got the handover delays, not upon sort of recruitment retention issues. They seem a bit higher, that's all.
Okay, well, from my reading, there's only one, the R3, that's at 25, and we've got no recommendation that any others should go to 25. I think the finance one, if I'm correct, my memory serves me right, it was 4x4 and it's moving to 5x4. So I'm going to hand over to Nicola if I can, because we've had long discussions, and the score of R3 is not new. We've had that on the bath for some time now because of basically what's happening, not least of which in relation to the serious incidents. So Nicola, do you want to come back to Mike on risk 3?
Sorry, I don't think the query was in relation to R3, was it? I think that is at 25, and the committee have recommended keeping that at 25. I think it's the ones that are the remit of the Workforce
D7,
Committee that are under discussion.
Yeah,
so I'm not sure that's me,
yeah.
that one.
It's
my apologies.
Yeah, it's in the front sheet. There are 2 risks. but the Workforce Committee want to increase the score to 25.
Okay. Well, Karen's asking us to agree or not.
I hold Mike's view, which is why I haven't amended the board assurance framework, but felt that the board, because it was a recommendation from the committee, I felt the board needed to consider it, and therefore I've included, I've highlighted that there's only one other risk, the one that you mentioned, that is at 25. And therefore, I think we would need to give it some consideration before increasing those risks.
Do we consider that now? Or?
The board can either consider it now or ask the Workforce Committee to reconsider based on the information that's in the report that I've provided. We might want to just ask other views or ask the members of the Workforce Committee why they made that recommendation.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. So first of all, my apologies. I'm just was zoning into the one that was 25 and strongly justifying it. Okay, we've got Kerry and then VJ to come in on this increased risk score. So can you take us through your thinking, Kerry, and then VJ?
Yeah, I think VJ will share the non-executive view on this. I think I would add that since the Workforce Committee that we've probably had two key developments, haven't we? We've had the extraordinary meeting on the 20th of July, which hopefully would have given some increased assurance to non-executive directors, particularly in relation to the staff wellbeing points and that particular risk on D7. And that may or may not have changed the non-executive view on whether that risk therefore should be a 25 or remain at a 20. And then I think in terms of risk D5, we have a paper in the confidential session where we're looking at the workforce plan, which again I think will impact on consideration of this particular risk and its scoring.
Okay, thanks for that, Kerry. VJ?
Thanks, Chair. So I agree with Kerry in relation to risk D5. I think we need to have that conversation before we come to a view that we need to reconsider the rating for this particular risk. With regard to risk D7, I am still, unless my other NET colleagues or exec colleagues take a different view on workforce, I get assurance from the efforts that EMAS is putting to ensuring the well-being of our staff. However, I've heard quite a lot even today in terms of, although it was in relation to patient safety discussion, the efforts and conversations which are going on within the system. Until such time as we see any green shoots of recovery, I think there is a real concern about our staff and how long they can sustain the excellent effort which they are putting in, and when would that tipping point be reached, and how would we be cited on that? And I think it is in that particular context, I think we should consider raising the risk level so that if it's possible, we bring extra focus on this, because our staff are the most important resource, and as Mike said, that's where majority of our funding goes. So we do really need to give it even more attention if that's possible.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of hands up to respond, I guess. So Ben and then Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I guess my point is the likelihood, I can sort of see the rationale why you might go to 5 for both of those, but I guess my view is the same as Mike on the impact. I don't know if we should look at it in this way or not, but is the impact for these two the same as R3, which is the hospital delays and the impact it has on patients' waiting? I don't know whether we should try and look at it in that way, but so I can see the argument for likelihood, but I don't think the impact from my view is a 5. I don't think it is catastrophic like we see for R3. So yeah, I'm not sure that both those risks should be a 25.
Okay, Thank you. Gary?
Thank you. I think I'm of the same view. I can understand that the likelihood of staff well-being deteriorating is probably as high as it can be, given where we are, and a 5 does sound reasonable. But the impact to me is serious, but probably not catastrophic. So I would suggest a 5/4 to raise this issue to a 20, which is very high in the organisation.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Paminda, and then I'm going to bring Richard in.
Just a comment in terms of what we were discussing earlier in terms of the rise in sickness levels. Is that a trend that we should be mindful of in terms of for this risk? Is that a telling sign that going forward, catastrophic for us is that we just don't have the staff, that they're off sick, and you know, is that now being manifested in the sickness levels? So that's all I would point out on that.
Okay, thanks, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So yeah, really important debate to be having this one. And what my view on this situation at the moment is that it is absolutely right that we have the forensic oversight of this this situation. It absolutely needs to be monitored. This needs to be flagged not only through in our own internal subcommittees in the board environment, but also within our external environment. When we look at the sort of the definitions of catastrophic, is total non-achievement of a strategic objective. I think what Gary summed it up quite nicely as he was describing around there. It's not catastrophic, and I would say at this stage. And I think for that reason, I think this is something that we've got to kind of continue the forensic focus on it. We've got to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can, because we still have, we still are delivering our service. And for me, it would be in a place where we had total inability to be able to deliver our core services with no sign of any tangible improvements or plan to recover that stage. I think it's a serious situation, something we rightly should be concerned about, but I don't think the definition of catastrophic is appropriate at this stage. That would be my view, Karen.
Okay, thanks for that. Karen, did you want to come in at all?
Yes, I mean, I think I would agree with what Richard's said, that on D7, I think it does, because that's very specific to the pressures in the health system. I think if we increase the likelihood to 5 but dropped the impact down to 4, that does it links with the other risks that we've got with the high score, which is all about pressures in the system, and that one we know that there is an impact on patients, a serious impact on patients, and I don't believe that we're quite there in terms of that catastrophic impact on staff. So I would suggest that we don't change the score at all for D5, but in terms of D7, we keep the overall score the same, but we just swap the likelihood and the impact around, so it will be a 5/4.
Okay.
To give it 20. That's my suggestion.
Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that in terms of the what we've been asked to look at today?
Karen, I'm just wondering, sorry to throw a spanner in the works on this one. I think the one in relation to D7 around the wellbeing, I wonder if there is further consideration back at Workforce Committee around this item, given the debate that we had a week or so ago as an extraordinary board discussion, the conversation that we've had today. I'm personally not entirely sure flipping the ratings around would be the correct way of addressing this. I personally don't feel as though the catastrophic rating is accurate, but I do think the almost certain environment is key. So I wonder if it's for the consideration from the Workforce Committee.
Okay, BJ.
Chair, I'm perfectly happy for it to come back to Workforce to reconsider. I've heard very carefully the comments and points made by colleagues, and I'm very happy to take them on board and for us to reconsider. I think the important thing is that we've actually had this discussion in this particular forum. So, we know that it's on everybody's radar, but yes, happy to take it back and and I do value the feedback from colleagues. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, VJ, and thanks everybody. I don't think we can underestimate the impact that it's having on our staff, and to keep that in the acute focus is absolutely paramount. So we will do that. So in summary then, from Karen's paper, we're asked to approve the revised board assurance framework, consider whether the scores for risks D5 and 7 should be increased, as suggested by the Workforce Committee. We've considered it, and we're returning it back to the Workforce Committee for further consideration.
And it's just the verbal from Finance and Performance about increasing.
Yeah, confirms the board assurance framework adequately identifies the strategic risks. I think we're all in agreement with that, and certainly we've talked about a considerable number of risks this morning, and agrees that it has sufficient assurance in relation to the risks included in the board assurance framework. And what we've also discussed is the verbal recommendations that came from FPC, and we're agreeing to those. Okay, you're all right with that, Karen? Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And that concludes the public board meeting of the 2nd of August today. So we need to move now, following the closure of the public board meeting into the confidential section. What I'm going to suggest is we are slightly ahead of time, so I'm going to suggest we have a 10-minute break and then we come back and go into the confidential section. So if people come back at 12:25, if that's possible, please. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay.
Are we coming back on this link, or is there a new link? There's a new link, isn't there?
I thought we were going to come back on the new link because obviously other people can access.
Yeah, it looks like it. They have, Rebecca. Everyone's
Yeah, they've all dropped out.
Come back
on the confidential link.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ben.
Brilliant. Cheers.